This is Dave Meltzer with Entrepreneurs The Playbook, and I am so excited. I'm back into the agentry game here with Erin Kane, VP for Octagon, one of the best in the world, the best agency in the world for representation of players, marketing players, as well as building legacies for those players, which we'll get into. And you come from a family of sports business people, and most common question I'm asked as we started talking was, hey, I want to be just like you, Mr. Meltzer. I want to be a sports agent.
Yeah.
And my biggest fear is that people don't know what it's like to be a sports agent. It's like when I was 18 and I went pre-med because my mom wanted me to be a doctor, and then my brother told me, who was a doctor, that you had to be in hospitals, and I told him I hated hospitals. He's like, wait a second, that's how I feel kids that want to be sports agents. So for you, let's connect the dots backwards. What led you to be pretty much the top woman sports agent that I know, and you're an incredible entrepreneur within that context?
Well, so I'm happy to say there are more and more women sports agents.
Me too.
And I had great examples when I was growing up because I got to know Stephanie Tollison, who was running IMG Tennis at the time, and there was a woman, Sherry Way, who was working in finance at IMG and then switched over and became, I think, still the only female PGA Tour agent. So we always talk about representation being important, and certainly I feel like I was very lucky to just have kind of visibility into really very, very few women in the 90s that were sports agents. What drew me to this is, truthfully, my path is probably not, it's very atypical, so it's not really a great example to kids who want to do this. But what drew me to it really was the challenge of it, and also the fact that it is a heavily male-dominated space, and that part of the challenge was, frankly, appealing to me. It's been my dad, who has been in the sports business, always said to me, this is a great point of differentiation for you. There's tons of guys out there, but you stand out just by virtue of being a woman, and you change the conversation just by being in the room. So there was this moment.
I love your dad. Change your weakness to your strength like that.
Like that. He's very
good
like that.
Just put it into a different place. But it's true though.
Yeah.
I saw the same thing, and I tell my daughters, I have 3 teenage daughters,
Yeah.
some of them want to get into sports as well,
Yeah.
and they're asking, has the field leveled off? I said, it's more level,
Yeah.
it's still male dominated, but not to the point where when in the 90s Robin Roberts was on ESPN, and I was like, oh my gosh, a woman sportscaster. What does she know about sports?
I know.
And this was, you hate to go backwards and judge people for how they thought or what they did, but that was just what teenage boys thought when you saw a woman in sports. And now I'm humbled to be around extraordinary women and humbled to think about what the future lies, because that equality is not just necessary in fairness, it's actually more abundant in to me in the co-creative environment, that the differences of men and women is needed.
Yes. Diversity of opinion, background, all sorts of things at the table, we know statistically and from data makes everything better.
So you said with the data that is out there with equality that
I know
we're
what I was
doing,
going to say.
Get it.
Sports is the venue where we like to tell stories about ourselves in America. We talk about Jackie Robinson and how he changed equality in this country. And, actually I've read Jackie Robinson's autobiography, and I think he had some more things to say on things that could have been a little bit better, and then he couldn't quite get to. But the bottom line is, it's the platform where we like to, it's a meritocracy. We as Americans like to think of our society as meritocratic. And until we see women as equal in the sports space, I don't think we'll see women as equals in the country. 80% of leadership positions still go to men. And we know, I think there's an incredible stat about women C-suite executives and how many of them played sports. It's the vast majority. So we know that that's another important component. And more young women since Title IX are coming up playing sports, having the expectation of playing sports, learning leadership skills, confidence, all these wonderful things. And so more and more young women are interested in being sports agents and participating in the sports business in some way or another.
It's funny that you mentioned sports and the transition from sports into executive leadership positions, right? Corporate leadership positions, because believe it or not, one of the differentiators, if you look at the statistics of C-levels or C-suite executives, is height. And people will always ask me, why are there less? I said, because there's less leaders on sports fields that are short. And ironically, though, if you go and look at anyone, I'll put myself at the level 5'7" and below, a short executive, that we all had a sports background.
Yeah.
I haven't met one smaller executive that didn't have the same. So they're hiring off of qualities, which is why I think going back to Title IX, like literally creating the opportunities for everyone to experience competition, leadership, collaboration, teamwork, and it goes on and on and on. Now,
and even more fundamentally, just it changes your outlook on the world when there isn't automatically a place you're excluded from. I was born after Title IX, or right around when Title IX was passed. There was never a moment in my life where I didn't think that if I had the talent and the ability, I could play a college sport.
Right.
Now, for me, the goal is also to push that carrot a little bit further out and have women's professional sports be vibrant and vital and viable for young women. And I think that is actually something that, there's a lot of talk in the space right now about girls who are 13 and 14 dropping out of sports. And we know why. It's because they think their time is better spent elsewhere. And I will maintain till my dying day that that's because they don't, boys at that age are like, I still want to be a professional basketball player. I want to be a pro football player. I want to, they have these professional sports aspirations, even if they're just okay. And for girls, it's like, well, what does that really even look like?
It's the Olympics.
It's the Olympics. It's every 4 years. There's a handful of athletes. It's better if I do gymnastics. I mean, there's, until we really, really start supporting and investing in women's professional sports, whether it's the LPGA Tour or the WNBA or the WNHL or whatever it is, that carrot isn't there, I don't think.
What do you think the difference is? I always found it amazing being in the space myself that women's tennis is an extremely popular, profitable business. And in fact, the women who win make almost equal to, if not equal to, money. And endorsements, Maria and Serena and Venus, they're way up there, maybe even more popular than the men. And I look at it and say, okay, we have baseball and softball, and just as many women play softball at a young age, and baseball, and especially in America, because we have so many Latin players that here it's incredible. What do you think the distinction is of why that sport in particular is so successful compared to some of the other sports? Because golf should be the exact same, but I know the endorsement side of a woman golfer, it's horrendous.
I wish I had data to support what I'm about to say. It's
okay.
really just my opinion.
Yeah, we love your opinion.
But I genuinely believe that the more sort of feminine sports are more palatable and easily accepted and grow faster.
I can see that.
Obviously what Billie Jean King did is incredible, and that ability to kind of have that parity transform the sport. So that's vital. But I think even beyond that, when you look at the popularity of gymnastics or figure skating or things like that, but what, I've worked with Jenny Finch for many years as a freshman at U of A. There was one game, the championship game of the Women's College World Series on ESPN. By her senior year, the entire tournament was televised. And, softball is now a revenue sport at the college level. But she was really the lightning rod for that. She became the face of the sport, and she's obviously very attractive, and like the code word for that in sports for a long time was very marketable. And yet she's the first one to say, I just can't wait till the day when all it requires is a woman to be good at what she's doing and not look amazing while she's doing it. Period, the end. She's an unbelievable athlete. And, we're still working on that. And at the end of the day, sports is entertainment. I get that, but
it's interesting too, because I always thought, knowing Jenny myself, and we put Mike Piazza and Eric Karras to bat against her, and they couldn't hit her. And I said, we could use the same philosophy, and why don't we have the men's baseball team at UCLA play the women's softball.
Yeah.
But I think those are the type of things that we need to do. I know in USA Shooting, I'm blessed to be on the board of the Olympics, and USA Shooting, historically, no one knows this, but women are better shooters than men.
That's interesting.
Right? They are, and it's the same reason men are better than some. There's just some biochemical and your hips are biological. The hips fit better, and they have a better hand-eye coordination at a higher level. And anyway, there was actually in the 50s, there was a co-ed sport in the Olympics, and the woman won the gold medal. And suddenly they made it a tie.
That's funny.
They made it a tie, and she won the playoff. And so there's this great movie to be made with the story, because my favorite part was, and it was so early, if we just would grab onto some of these things, the man who won the gold pulled the woman up and gave her the gold.
That's such a fascinating story for a lot of reasons. Number one, because often the female athletes that I work with find that their peers and their male peers in their sport or their adjacent sport, whether softball, baseball,
like the NBA for sure,
they're the least threatened by their talent and are so encouraging of it and view them as friends and sisters, and there's real relationships between these people and they support each other. It's the outside that really sort of doesn't get that. And I mean, the other thing that's so interesting to me is this need to compare the two and make women's sports viable by comparing it to a men's sport. I mean, that on This Week in Baseball, where Jenny was pitching to MLB players, was amazing entertainment. It was really fun to watch. But at the same time, softball is a different sport than baseball.
Sure.
And it needs to be, appreciated for its own merits and not in comparison to baseball. And it's the same for women's basketball. I mean, it's a much more similar game, but it is its own game. It's, the women play a different game, and there's value to that.
The problem with basketball is they discriminate against short people, but statistically I can prove that.
I'm sure.
And talent-wise as well. Whenever there's a height thing within the sport, height seems to be an issue. Anyways, so moving forward, one of the things that you're known for is creating not just the representation side, but a legacy, a brand, something that goes beyond, which is, in any of the sports, so important, because an athlete experiences 2 deaths and they don't realize how soon they're going to die their first one when you're a professional athlete. No one ever, even my business partner Warren Moon, who played till he was 44, he thought he had another, when you hear Tom Brady until he's 50, but now that I'm over 50, it happens really fast.
I know. Well, yeah, I mean, and certainly no one wants to think about it or talk about it while they're still playing, although that seems to be changing. I mean, I think the idea of the athlete entrepreneur and the ability to extend their career and kind of
thank God for
build.
me. That's my whole space now, executive coaching the CJ Andersons of the world, right?
Well, I mean, it is, they finally are sort of recognizing the capital that they have, which is, the relationships, not just money, but the ability to connect and meet with people because of who they are at that particular time in their life. And it's so smart. And I mean, the athletes starting to kind of control the media space now. It's a whole new game. It's really interesting to see that NCAA rule or the law that was just passed in California was broken on uninterrupted with Matt Carter and LeBron. I mean, that's totally fascinating and a real, in many ways, game changer.
Last question, 2 parts. What's your favorite thing about being a sports agent and executive?
My favorite thing, it is incredible to work in such close proximity to people who are as gifted and creative and just innately incredible as these athletes. I mean, they are truly special. So to be able to witness that from up close is totally spectacular. And I also love that no 2 days are ever the same. It presents, because you're really managing lives. And so there's an ever-changing array of things that you're kind of working with or dealing with, and that never stops being fascinating.
Second part of the question, most challenging part.
The most challenging part is it's 24/7 and you're working on other people's lives. And I think like many people struggle there are so many things we can't control but are expected to control. And so, I don't know, you just do the best you can.
Tie into that because, being an ex-sports agent and executive myself, one of the things that occurs is the perspective of your client. And it's like being a lawyer. They always said you never can satisfy your client. If you win, you should have won more. If you lose, you definitely aren't happy.
Yeah.
I've had extraordinary stories where one of my clients who won the Rhodes Scholarship and played in the NFL, his whole family, when Smartwater launched with Jennifer Aniston, just bombarded me going, how come you didn't get that deal? And I said, well, because Jennifer Aniston is on Friends and hardly anyone in the world knows who your son is and your brother is. I understand he's very smart, maybe even smarter than Jennifer Aniston. And that was, to me, the 24/7 was really difficult. Because their time, it doesn't matter. They forget you have a life, they forget you have other clients. But the most incredible and most challenging thing is you have no perspective on what's going on, and now I have to deal with reality and risk losing my client because you have all the leverage that within 3 days you can go to another agency by giving notice. How do you deal with that discrepancy of perspective?
I think when you're in it, it's really hard to see the forest for the trees. And so in those moments, it's always like, okay, what are my personal principles? And truth telling, even no matter how difficult, is a personal principle that I have. And I mean, really, honesty. Because the athlete-agent relationship is just that, it's a relationship, and I really don't believe any agent or any relationship can survive without that kind of truth. And before I sign clients, I always say, you might not always like what I have to say, but I'm going to give you the honest, unvarnished truth, and then this is your life, and you're going to make a decision, and I'll support you in that decision. And that is how I approach it. I try not to get I try to keep my blinders on a little bit.
Excellent advice, too. Well, this has been an extraordinary playbook for people who are dying to get in sports, dying to be sports agents. I hope you don't get flooded with resumes. We won't give out our email on this show, but anyway, we have Erin Kane, the Vice President of Octagon, soon to be legend. You'll see. I know this space very well. What a pleasure. And please, men and women out there, if you're interested, remember, just go and connect the dots backwards. Whatever the profession is, especially sports agentry, I would say it's really simple. To be a sports agent, you got to get clients and keep them. That's the first thing that you should practice beyond going to law school or any other questions that you have. Anyway, Erin Kane, Vice President of Octagon with Dave Meltzer, Entrepreneurs, the Playbook.